Welcome to the City of Elliot Lake's Volunteer Training virtual presentation. The goal of this presentation is to provide volunteers with basic health and safety and risk management training to ensure that we carry out services and events in the safest way possible. First and foremost, we would like to acknowledge the positive impact that volunteers have on making our community a caring and inclusive place to live and work. Volunteers assist in providing strong, sustainable programming and supplement the services provided to the City of Elliot Lake. Without volunteers, our programs and special events would not come to fruition. So thank you. Merci, miigwech. We couldn't do it without you. Topics that will be covered during today's presentation will include volunteer responsibilities, how to come prepared for your assignment, policies, accessibility, code of conduct, health and safety, violence and harassment, and incident reporting. In order for our volunteer program to run successfully, we have developed a set of responsibilities for the municipality as well as for our volunteers. These responsibilities include adhering to all applicable municipal rules, policies, and procedures provided to you, and ensuring that you are complying with all directions issued by your supervisor. Communicate with staff. Show up. If you're asked to be somewhere at a specific time, please ensure that you can make it, and if not, please communicate this with your city contact person. If there's no communication, we would expect that you show up on time, trained, and ready to help. Keeping things confidential. Maintain the confidentiality of any information that is accessed, exchanged, or conveyed during the duration of your placement. Complete forms and background checks. Provide the municipality with a criminal record check and complete all applicable forms provided to you. Responsibilities do not only lie with the volunteer, but also with the municipality. We commit to training our volunteers in safety training, workplace harassment, code of conduct, incident reporting, etc. Ensure the safety of our volunteers. Ensure volunteers have clear direction on the task assigned. Be available for questions or concerns. And treat volunteers as respected members of the working team. Coming prepared. Depending on the activity, volunteers may be required to wear personal protective equipment, including a vest, to ensure that you are visible and identifiable as a volunteer. When your shift is complete, we ask that you return your vest and provided personal protective equipment to your city contact person. Depending on the event, you might also want to consider the clothing you are wearing. If you are working outside, light breathable clothing would be preferred. Wearing layers is always best practice if there appears to be a shift in weather coming. If you're going to be working outside, you may want to bring things such as a hat, sunscreen, and sunglasses. Ensure you are drinking plenty of water if it's hot outside. Ensure that your footwear is conducive to the activity you are volunteering for. For example, if you're going to be bartending, you might want to consider running shoes instead of high heels. Accessible customer service. The City of Elliot Lake trains all volunteers and employees in accessible customer service. The Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, or the AODA, is designed to ensure that the province of Ontario is fully accessible for all of its residents. Not all disabilities are visible. According to the AODA, a disability is defined as any degree of physical disability, infirmity, malformation, or disfigurement, including any measure of paralysis, vision loss, hearing or sensory impediment, intellectual or development impairment, mental health disorders, or a combination of multiple disabilities. Accessibility is not only required by laws such as the AODA, but also part of our human rights under the Ontario Human Rights Code. Under the code, service providers have a duty to accommodate the needs of people with disabilities to the point of undue hardship to ensure they have equal opportunities, equal access, and can enjoy equal benefits. Providing accessible customer service starts with asking a simple question: how may I help? Offering positive customer service with people with disabilities requires awareness of principles of respect. Speak respectfully to all customers. Do not talk down to people with disabilities or assume they are uneducated. Dignity. Avoid drawing attention to a person's disability. They are not defined by it. Independence. Offer your assistance, but do not take over completely or try to force the customer to accept your help. Equal opportunity and integration. Do your best to ensure that equal participation is possible for everyone. Code of Conduct. The purpose of the Code of Conduct is to establish those principles of conduct which should guide employees and volunteers in discharging their duties. The Code of Conduct is broken down into 6 different categories. The use and care of city property. Employees and volunteers are not permitted to use city property, vehicles, equipment, supplies, or services for personal or private use unless there is proper authorization. Employees and volunteers are responsible for the protection of all city assets and shall be used in the city's best interest and shall not be taken, loaned, sold, destroyed without authorization. Theft and fraud. Employees and volunteers shall exercise honesty, integrity, and diligence and shall not knowingly be part of any fraudulent activity. Should any theft or fraud occur, discipline including termination will occur, as well as criminal prosecution when deemed appropriate. Conflict of interest. If an employee or volunteer is aware or believes he or she may have a conflict of interest, they should immediately report this to their volunteer supervisor. Confidential information. Employees and volunteers shall not disclose confidential information held by the corporation in accordance with the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Any uncertainty will be addressed with the city volunteer supervisor or their director. Media relations. Only the Chief Administrative Officer should comment to the media on policy matters unless otherwise authorized. Employees and volunteers should refrain from expressing their personal views to the media on matters of political controversy or municipal policy when such comments are likely to impair public confidence in the municipality. 6. Avoidance of preferential treatment. Employees and volunteers shall not accord preferential treatment in relation to any matter to family or friends. Health and safety. The purpose of our health and safety policy is to promote accident prevention and employee and volunteer safety in a healthy and safe work environment. When it comes to safety, it is everyone's duty to ensure they are carrying out their jobs to the best of their ability and as safely as possible. The city is responsible for ensuring that safety is considered a priority as a performance standard. The city will ensure training is provided to employees and volunteers. Ensure compliance with applicable federal, provincial, and municipal safety legislation. Ensure that standards and procedures are developed and followed. Set personal protective equipment guidelines. Ensure the prompt reporting of incidents, and take appropriate action for violations of legislation, policies, or rules and regulations. The city is also responsible for ensuring that equipment, materials, and protective devices are maintained and in good working condition. The city must take every precaution reasonable in the circumstances for worker protection. Supervisors of the city are responsible to ensure that staff are trained in the tasks that they are assigned to. Ensuring employees and volunteers are wearing the appropriate PPE for the task, and reporting any accidents or incidents. Employees and volunteers are responsible to ensure that they comply with all established safety policies and procedures. They must report hazardous conditions to their city contact or supervisor. Not work or operate equipment in a manner that could endanger themselves or others, and wear and care for protective clothing and equipment required for the job. Reporting of accidents and incidents. The importance of reporting and investigating incidents cannot be overemphasized. The objective is not to place blame, but rather to identify the cause of the accident and incident so that controls can be put in place to prevent future occurrences. Should an incident or accident occur, the following steps are taken. The first priority is to respond to any emergency promptly, such as providing first aid or medical response to the injured. If it's serious, call the proper authorities. Call your department head and supervisor. Secure and manage the scene of the accident and incident so that there is no further risk of injury. Complete an incident report and leave your information with city staff, should there be a requirement for additional information from you after the fact. Hazardous conditions. All employees and volunteers are responsible for reporting any hazardous conditions in the workplace to their supervisor. Examples of hazardous conditions could be a fire, release of toxic gas, improper riding on vehicles, poorly lit areas, cluttered stairways, or walkways. Workplace violence and harassment. The City of Elliot Lake is committed to the prevention of workplace violence and harassment for employees and volunteers. Workplace violence is described as an attempt to exercise physical force against a worker in a workplace that could cause physical injury to the worker or volunteer. Some examples of workplace violence include physically threatening behaviors such as shaking a fist, finger pointing, destroying property, or throwing objects, bullying, verbal or written threats, leaving threatening notes, wielding a weapon, or stalking someone. Domestic violence is described as a pattern of behavior used by one person to gain power and control over another person with whom he or she has had an intimate relationship with. Examples of domestic violence in the workplace can include making threatening calls on the worker's telephone, coming directly into the workplace to cause harm to the worker, stalking or waiting for the worker to leave the workplace. Workplace harassment is described as engaging in a course of vexatious comments or conduct against a worker in the workplace that is known, or ought to be reasonably known, to be unwelcome. Examples of workplace harassment include verbally abusive behavior such as yelling, humiliating, and name-calling, workplace pranks, vandalism, bullying or hazing, excluding or ignoring someone or persistent exclusion, sabotaging someone else's work, or offensive or intimidating phone calls. Workplace sexual harassment is described as engaging in a course of vexatious comments or conduct against a worker in a workplace because of sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, or by making a sexual solicitation or advance that ought to be known to be unwelcome. Both men and women can be victims of sexual harassment. Examples of sexual harassment include unwanted sexual advances or demands, offering a benefit in exchange for sexual favor, displaying sexually offensive material, unwelcome remarks, jokes, innuendos, or physical contact of a sexual nature. Workplace harassment, violence, and sexual harassment is unacceptable and will not be tolerated from any person in the workplace, including workers, supervisors, volunteers, contractors, customers, elected officials, or members of the public. Workers and volunteers are encouraged to raise their concerns to their supervisor or city contact person. Management will investigate and deal with all incidents and complaints of workplace violence or harassment in a timely and fair manner, respecting the privacy of all concerned to the best extent possible. Incident reporting. Incident reporting forms should be completed anytime there is a near miss, injury, illness, property damage, critical injury, fire, or environmental release. In addition, if the event that you are volunteering for is licensed, SmartServe has a requirement to complete an incident form should the following occur. An intoxicated guest is refused service. A minor presents false ID. A guest becomes violent or a fight breaks out. Anytime a guest is asked by staff to leave. You arrange transportation for an intoxicated guest. A liquor inspector visits your establishment. A guest has an accident or becomes ill, or the police are called. Incident forms can be found with any staff member on site or from your volunteer staff coordinator. Thank you for participating in our virtual volunteer training presentation. We look forward to seeing you at our next event.